Today, we begin Lesson 30, which is in Unit 3, New France, which is in America. Sounds like monkey business to me. Anyway, there's New France, and there's Original France. You're going to review today's time tunnel cards, which is 1 through 9, today, right now. Stop. And when you're done, we'll continue.
I guess that's what happens when you have monkeys introduce Unit 3. Okay, to continue with today's lesson, please prepare maps and images. Open to page 47. Your Student Explorer, pages 37 and 39. And you're going to need to carefully cut out each of the pictures and the text. And I'll explain what we're going to do next, because you're going to need a piece of that poster board we sent with some glue. Timeline sticker book number 11. And your big book of stories. You're going to need your book and the app. Before we begin our lesson, you have a choice. The choice you get to make is those cards that you cut out on page 37 and 39, you can place in the order that you think they go. But don't glue them yet. Just place them in order that you think. Or you can listen to what the story says and place them in order according to the story. And then at the very end, you can glue them to the poster board. Okay, do you have in mind what you want to do? Let's start. The age of exploration brought tremendous change to the world in the 14th through the 17th centuries. Europeans were colonizing lands around the globe, especially in the area they called the New World. Remember that from the 5 themes? The rich natural resources on the American continents led to strong competition between the Spanish, English, Dutch, and French to lay claim to this land. So they all sent explorers to find the most profitable areas. In 1534, Jacques Cartier arrived in New France. Now remember, we said New France was America. This is the area considered part of Canada and the northern United States, so he can be credited as the first major French explorer in the area. But he did not successfully begin any settlements. Find and place the Jacques Cartier event in your Student Explorer. Successful settlement did not happen until 70 years later, when France invited Samuel de Champlain to explore North America. Now, if you also look at your timeline, you'll find Jacques Cartier, the claim of Canada. Did you find 1534? Now, like we were saying, Samuel de Champlain was one of the first to have successful settlements. He had been known as a reputable navigator and cartographer, or map maker. If you look at your maps and images, page 47, you'll see that his expeditions led to the Caribbean Sea and Central America. And in 1603, Champlain sailed in a longboat along the St. Lawrence River to the rapids near Montreal. Then he tried to settle in a region of Acadia, but the conditions were too harsh. In 1605, he moved to the Bay of Fundy to Port Royal. This time he was successful, and for the first French colony was formed, Port Royal, now called Annapolis Royal. Find and place Port Royal event in your Student Explorer. In 1608, Champlain led 32 men northwest to found a city of Quebec. After a bitterly cold winter, only 9 men, including Champlain, had survived. Still, he pressed on and built a fur trading fort in Quebec so that France would control the river and the fur trade. If the fur trade in Quebec flourished, perhaps more French would decide to settle there. Find and place the Quebec event in your Student Explorer. Now let's look at your timeline book, sticker number 11, The Life of Samuel de Champlain, A.D. 1567 through 1635. You know, as it turns out, the fur trade, or at least the circumstances surrounding the fur trade, were actually the thing that deterred settlers. Native Americans, remember that from the 5 themes? Well, the Native Americans were there first. They trapped and skinned beavers and other animals, then traded the pelts for European goods like guns and cloth. The Europeans then sent the furs back to Europe, where they were considered fashionable and were therefore in high demand. This high demand for American resources attracted European settlers, but it also encouraged the Native American tribes to deplete those resources themselves for trade. When the animal population in Quebec was depleted, the local tribes expanded their hunting territory. Unfortunately, this meant they began hunting on the land of other Native American tribes, which led to tribal wars. This violence was not contained to the Native Americans, though. In addition to the Europeans fighting amongst themselves and encroaching on Native American land, the Native Americans would also regularly attack European settlements. Find and place Native American event in your Student Explorer. Well, between the harsh winters and the constant threat of violence, most people did not want to settle in New France. And by the mid-1620s, only about 55 settlers, mostly men, remained. Around this time, Cardinal Richelieu, France's Secretary of State, was thinking about the untapped potential in New France. He thought that the settlements might finally flourish if, instead of many small trading companies operating in the area, one large company controlled the fur trade. So Richelieu started the Company of New France. The French government would give the company complete control over fur trading in New France, but in return, the company had to bring in 4,000 settlers over the next 25 years to ensure the French colonies remained Roman Catholic in their beliefs. Are you familiar with the saying, timing is everything? Well, in this instance, Richelieu's timing could not have been worse. France and England were at war, so sea travel from France was dangerous. Not surprisingly, when the company's ships carrying food, provisions, and colonists embarked for New France, they were quickly captured by the British. And when French-English War ended in 1629, the company finally had an opening to try again, but the ships were captured by the British. Slowly, the company started building forts and settlements again along the shores of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, the Bay of Fundy, and the St. Lawrence River. These settlements became permanent, but growth was slow. And while missionary work was important to many of the French settlers, the fur trade remained a priority. Find and place the Company of New France event in your Student Explorer. Although the settlements were growing during this time, it wasn't enough to meet the requirements the Company of New France had been given. French King Louis XIV finally took control of New France in 1663 and made it a royal province, or an official French territory. He decided to boost the population of the colonists by paying for French citizens to travel to New France. In little time, 3 unique districts were developed: Quebec, Trois-Rivières, and Montreal. The population in these districts might have been increasing, but only in the number of men. There were 6 men to every 1 woman. For the population to begin to grow on its own without constantly shipping in new people, New France needed women. That's funny. Louis XIV was so committed to the success of New France that he paid for around 800 women to travel to the colonies. These women were called filles du roi, or daughters of the king, and ranged in age from 16 to 40 years old. Many of them were poor, with no hope of improving their situation in France, but if they traveled to the colonies, they were given importance and wealth, the latter in the form of a dowry, which was money to be given to their husbands after marriage. Their only requirement was that they had to marry soon after arrival, and the French crown offered an additional financial bonus to any woman who went on to have more than 10 children. They must think these women are cats, because only cats have that many children at a time. That's just crazy. The Filles du Roi were a success. Just 40 years later, despite few other French immigrating or moving away from France, the population had grown to around 16,000 people. Find and place Filles du Roi event in your Student Explorer. Now your textbook asked us to pause here and give you a question. The Filles du Roi received more wealth and opportunity in New France, but they also faced greater uncertainty. Do you think if you were a 16-year-old girl, do you think it'd be worth it? Finally, New France was a success. The fur trade was going well, the settlements were growing, and the French colonists had made peace with the Native Americans. What could stop them now? War. War stopped them. The French and Indian War, to be exact. You'll learn more about this war and effects in a future lesson, but for now it's important to note that the end of the war would see France surrender all of New France east of the Mississippi River to Britain, all but obliterating France's land holdings in North America. However, it did not end French culture in North America. If you remember from the 5 themes, French culture in North America maintained by language, religion, culture, and refusing to assimilate into British society. This fierce protection of their French heritage is why the same areas in Canada are still speaking French today. Well, your worksheets should be finished if you listen to our little worksheet bell hint. So now it's time for the Big Book of Stories. Open your Big Book to page 141. Open your app. Hit History. Then select Audio. Pick The Child Who Defended Castle Dangerous. And your super secret code, PVW. And while you're listening to the story, think about what characteristics did Madeline have that helped her to be successful? And why do you think her little brother wanted to be like her?
Okay, Remy, this is Mayhem. Enjoy the story. Talk to you later.